this one, we would like to draw your attention to the tab labeled stipulations. In stipulation 6, the plaintiff and defense have agreed to pre-admit several documents, including the will, assets, death certificate, and medical record of Avery Bancroft. With that, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
This time,
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the defense would like the court to take judicial notice of, it should be under the relevant law tab of the bench book, on page 8 of the Midlands Law Claypool v. U, which states that in a Slater statute proceeding, evidence showing the defendant's psychological profile does not match a psychological profile of a hypothetical culpable actor, doesn't constitute evidence of a person's character or character trait.
can you repeat that case again?
Yes, Your Honor, that would be Claypool v. U on the top of page 8.
Thank you.
In addition, Your Honor, if an objection is sustained, would you want counsels to motion to strike or assume that it's stricken?
You can assume it's stricken.
Yes, Your Honor. Nothing further from the defense.
Thank you. Plaintiff, are you ready for your argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
May I proceed? You may proceed. Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, may it please the court. Today we are here because betrayal was brewing aboard the Mid-Riverine Express. How a medallion and a growing sense of resentment led the defendant, Taylor Hobson, to kill her own father. You see, over 20 years ago, the defendant's mother, Martha, was diagnosed with cancer. Lacking financial means to pursue a potentially life-saving treatment, the defendant reached out to their estranged father, Avery Bancroft, begging for his assistance. But when Mr. Bancroft denied the defendant money, when their mother unfortunately passed away in 2009, this planted the seed of resentment deep within Taylor Hobson's heart, where it would begin to fester and brew. But you see, for a time, a monthly $50,000 stipend sent to the defendant by none other than her father, Avery Bancroft, kept this resentment at bay. Well, at least until April 2023, when Mr. Bancroft stopped sending that stipend altogether. So, in April 2024, Ms. Hobson boarded the Mid-Riverine Express not just to exact revenge on her father, but to obtain a medallion. Her late mother's medallion. A medallion that her mother had gifted to Mr. Bancroft over 20 years ago. A medallion that Mr. Bancroft never took off. A medallion that Ms. Hobson thought she would never get back. So in April 2024, on the 24th, Ms. Hobson entered his cabin and brewed her father a special cup of tea. A tea that she knew he couldn't resist. A tea, members of the jury, laced with a high concentration of potassium, which she knew would be fatal to someone with his medical condition. So after she left his cabin that night, after she exploited her father's CKD, she ripped her mother's late medallion off his neck, knowing she'd gotten exactly what she came for. Knowing that in a few mere hours, the potassium she brewed in her father's tea would halt his heart completely. Now, we aren't just here today because of medallions. We're here today because of this. Taylor Hobson, being a 95% beneficiary to her father's estate, stands not only to come out of her father's murder with his medallion, but a $400 million payday. Members of the jury, despite what you may have just heard, today is not a criminal trial, but rather a civil one. We will prove to you that Taylor Hobson played a role in the death of their father, but they will not be convicted of murder. Instead, under the Slayer statute, which states that a culpable actor in the death of another cannot inherit that individual's estate, we will prove to you that Taylor Hobson played a role in the death of her father. Meaning that if you find it ever more slightly probable than not, that the scales of justice tip against Taylor Hobson even a fraction of a degree, you must find her liable. Today, we embrace the burden to prove her guilt by preponderance of the evidence, and we will do so by calling 3 key witnesses. First, you will hear from a private investigator, Jordan Nathanson. She'll go on to describe how Mr. Bancroft implored her for her help, how he thought that something was brewing aboard the Mid-Riverine Express, how he thought that someone was out to do him harm, and how tea with the defendant confirmed her guilt. Next, you'll hear from a medical expert, Dr. Hillary Edmond. She'll go on to describe how Mr. Bancroft's medical condition made him fatally adverse to none other than potassium, and how this potassium likely caused his death, and how she reviewed a material, a concentrated banana extract, that she saw that very same trip. Finally, you'll hear from Ms. Hobson's former partner, Kelly Dews. Kelly Dews will go on to outline the strained relationship between the defendant and her father. But most of all, Ms. Dews will come to the stand and she'll tell you that the day of her father's death, she saw Taylor Hobson wearing a medallion. That very same medallion that her father never took off, none other than the day of his death. Members of the jury, Taylor Hobson brewed far more than a mere cup of tea for her father on April 25th. She brewed a plot of betrayal. She's already gotten away with robbing her father of his life and his medallion. A medallion, I might add, that Taylor Hobson didn't dare wear in court today because it would have been far too damning of her guilt. It is up to you, members of the jury, to make sure that Taylor Hobson doesn't walk away with both Mr. Bancroft's medallion and his millions. That is why, at the conclusion of today's trial, my co-counsel, Alexia Sella, will ask you to return a verdict of liable for the death of Avery Bancroft. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, may it please the court. A doctor loses their job. They lose their entire practice. This doctor, they can't get a job in Midlands for nearly 2 years. She's desperate for money. She meets Avery Bancroft, the man that took nearly everything away from her. Mr. Bancroft threatens the doctor's family. The next morning, Avery Bancroft is found dead. The doctor, desperation, demise. On April 22nd, Taylor Hobson and her father boarded a train in Australia. Their relationship was strenuous, but it was one that Taylor tried to mend. Now, the plaintiff just told you that on that train, Taylor intentionally caused the death of her father. But today you're going to learn that's simply not true. That another passenger on that train, Dr. Hillary Edmond, needed Mr. Bancroft gone, so on April 25th, she did everything in her power to ensure his demise. The doctor, desperation, demise. Now today we don't have to prove that Taylor wasn't involved in this death. It's the plaintiff's job to prove that she was. Because today, the plaintiff bears a burden of proof. They must prove by preponderance of the evidence that Taylor is liable for her father's death. But they're not going to be able to meet that burden. Because the defense will ask you to consider 3 questions. 1, who on the train knew that potassium extract could kill Mr. Bancroft? Today you're going to learn that Avery Bancroft had chronic kidney disease. You'll learn that high amounts of potassium can be deadly to somebody with that condition. Then, Dr. Hillary Edmond will take the stand and she'll tell you that she studied chronic kidney disease for years. That she knew potassium extract would be fatal for Avery Bancroft. That she was in the store that sold the very potassium extract used to kill him. The second question, who on the train wanted Mr. Bancroft gone? Today you're going to learn from another passenger on that train. She'll testify and she'll tell you that Dr. Edmond hated Mr. Bancroft. That she resented him for ruining her reputation, causing her to lose her job. On that train, Avery Bancroft blackmailed Dr. Edmond. Dr. Edmond, who hadn't had a job in more than a year. Dr. Edmond, who lost her entire career. Dr. Edmond, who is more desperate than ever. When Dr. Edmond heard Mr. Bancroft's threat, they decided to do the unthinkable. Now, the plaintiff is going to tell you today that Taylor Hobson needed money. But today you're going to learn that for Taylor, her father's money wasn't a priority on that train. That she struggled with her difficult relationship with her father. That she wanted to reconnect with him, to build the relationship that they never had. Now, she'll never get that opportunity. The third question: could Taylor Hobson have had anything to do with Mr. Bancroft's death? Today, you're going to hear from Taylor herself, and she'll tell you that Dr. Edmond was the last person to see Mr. Bancroft alive. That Dr. Edmond had access to the very potassium extract used to kill him. Dr. Edmond knew exactly how to kill Avery Bancroft. Dr. Edmond was desperate to save her reputation, her spouse's reputation. So on April 25th, Dr. Edmond insured Mr. Bancroft's demise. The doctor, desperation, demise. But I want to talk for a moment about the evidence you're not going to see in court today. You won't see a witness take that stand and tell you that they saw Taylor kill her father. You won't see a witness tell you that they saw Taylor enter her father's cabin that night. You won't see photos or videos of Taylor entering her father's cabin that night. You won't see a single piece of forensic evidence tying Taylor Hobson to Mr. Bancroft's death. It doesn't exist. Because today you're going to learn from a psychologist with years of clinical experience who will tell you that Taylor didn't have any feelings of aggression towards her father. That after her father's death, she regretted not reconnecting with him. That Taylor does not fit the profile of someone capable of homicide. Members of the jury, today the plaintiff will tell you over and over that Taylor was desperate for her father's money. Taylor was desperate, but it wasn't for her father's money. She was desperate for a connection. A connection with a man that pushed her away no matter how hard she tried to reach out. On that train, all Taylor wanted was the chance to love her father. And Dr. Edmonds took it from her. At the end of this trial, my co-counsel, Mr. Flato Jones, will come before you and he'll ask you to return the only verdict consistent with the evidence. A verdict of not liable. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Plaintiff, are you ready with your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Jordan Nathanson to the stand. May I proceed?
Yes.
Please state your name for the court.
Jordan Nathanson.
And what do you do for a living, Ms. Nathanson?
I currently run my own practice. I am a private investigator. However, I was previously employed by the FBI. I began working there right after I graduated in the BAU division.
What did you do for the FBI?
I worked in the behavioral analysis unit. There I dealt with a multitude of cases ranging from larceny, domestic terrorism, homicide. It was a lot of very interesting work. However, I do prefer private investigating as I have a lot more control over my cases. Regardless, my time at the FBI turned me into the investigator I am today.
Did you end up receiving any degrees connected to your private investigation?
Yes, I did my undergrad at Bowling Green State University, pursued a degree in psychology and biochemistry. I fell in love with biochemistry personally, and then I got a master's in that at Michigan State.
So
So, Ms. Nathanson, let's start talking about that train ride. Why did you board the Mid-Riverine Express?
It's a little complicated. I got a call from JC Longstreet about a potential investigation in Perth. He owns the Mid-Riverine Express, and as a client, he told me to go on the Mid-Riverine Express. There I would be boarding on April 22nd and leave on the 25th to Perth.
So, you weren't on the train to perform any investigations?
I did not conduct any official investigation while on the train.
Let's talk about who you saw on the train. Did you happen to recognize anybody?
It was a little strange. There were a lot of familiar faces from back home in Midlands. I guess more notably it'd be Mr. Avery Bancroft. Again, I only really knew him from reputation, and Taylor Hobson, his child, who I also knew just from reputation.
Did you ever interact with Mr. Bancroft on the train?
I did. On April 24th, it struck me as a lot, but Mr. Avery Bancroft offered me $5 million to investigate. He thought someone was after him. He seemed so frightened. He was flustered, fidgeting with this necklace he had on. I felt really bad for him, in all honesty.
Necklace? What necklace?
It was this really nice medallion. I mean, it had this gorgeous phoenix on it.
And would you recognize the medallion if it was shown to you today?
Yes, I reviewed a photo of it in preparation for today's trial.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel and the witness with Exhibit 17. Would Your Honor like a courtesy copy?
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes. Now, Ms. Nathanson, is this the medallion that you saw around Avery Bancroft's neck?
It is.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of that medallion?
Yes, very memorable now.
Motion to enter Exhibit 17 into evidence?
motion granted. Oh, sorry, any,
No objection, Your Honor.
Now, Ms. Nathanson, let's get back to that conversation. How did you respond to Bancroft's offer?
Despite his obvious, discomfort, I had to decline. Unfortunately, given the time that I was on the train, I'd be leaving the next day, it would be nearly impossible for me to investigate this as thoroughly as he would deserve. I mean, he was very known in Midlands, but again, it wasn't a very good reputation that he had. I don't think the public really enjoyed Avery Bancroft's presence, so it'd be very, very tough to investigate this. I politely declined his offer, but it didn't seem to ease his nerves at all, so I gave him a little piece of free advice, and I told him to look out for those who are closest to him. In my experience, it always is the closest person to him.
Now, Ms. Nathanson, what did you do after this conversation?
I went back to my cabin, and while there, I received another call from JC Longstreet.
And what was this phone call about?
He called me and asked if Miss Taylor Hobson was on the train, and he asked me to go talk to Taylor Hobson about some money she owed him. He left out a lot of details I didn't really push, but he was a client, so I went after. So I afterwards hung up the phone, and I went to Taylor Hobson's cabin.
What happened once you got to Taylor Hobson's cabin?
I knocked on the door, and Taylor Hobson opened it, and I said, quite up front, JC wants to know when you plan on paying him back. It was a hefty amount, I think.
Now, what did Taylor Hobson respond to this?
She kind of cocked her head a little bit and then invited me into her cabin for tea. While I went in, I noticed on her bedside table there was this teacup set as well as some tea leaves. She started preparing some tea. She said it would be peppermint, her favorite type of tea. So I took the tea leaves and I smelled them. As a biochemist, I adore the chemistry behind all of these. And it was very, very strong. She must have gotten a very potent type of tea. Anywho, she starts pouring out the tea, and then I noticed that that wasn't the only thing that she had put into my teacup.
What else did she put into your tea?
She had this bottle with like a banana label on it, and she put it into both of our teas.
Objection, Your Honor, as to lack of proper foundation. This witness is testifying that there was a substance in her tea as well as Taylor Hobson's tea. However, she hasn't explained whether she saw Taylor Hobson put it in the tea, whether it was there already, and how she knows the substance and what it is.
response?
Yes, Your Honor, my witness testified to visibly seeing Taylor Hobson pour this supplement into both of her drinks. The witness has not stated that they know what the supplement is, just that she was pouring something with a bottle on it into their cups.
If I may, Your Honor, I believe Ms. Nathanson testified that there was a substance that came from the bottle into her teacup as well as Ms. Hobson's. I don't believe the witnesses, I don't believe Ms. Nathanson has explained how it got there and how she saw it.
May I respond? The witness witness has explained that she sat down with Taylor Hobson, and Taylor Hobson poured a bottle with banana in it into both of their drinks. She has not made any further testimony, so no further foundation has to be laid other than the fact that she's aware of this bottle and that it has banana on it.
I would agree, objection overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Ms. Nathanson, would you recognize this bottle if it was shown to you today?
Yes, I reviewed a similar label, in preparation for today's trial.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel and the witness with Exhibit 41.
Thank you.
Now, Ms. Nathanson, is that the bottle that you saw that day?
Yeah, it is. Appears to be the same exact one. I remember the banana.
Is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
Motion to enter Exhibit 41 into evidence?
Response?
No objection, Your Honor.
So moved into evidence.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Ms. Nathanson, let's keep talking about this conversation. What happened after Hobson poured that substance into your drinks?
Well, in my experience, it's never a good idea to just drink from a stranger, especially when you've seen them pour some random substance into your drink. So obviously I questioned her about it, and she said it was a supplement she had been taking recently, and she wanted to know if I could taste a difference. So after taking a sip, I told her that I could not taste a single thing. It tasted like peppermint tea to me. And I mean, I was a little bit shocked. I think it's a little bit presumptuous to be pouring supplements into my tea, but whatever.
What did you do after this conversation, Ms. Nathanson?
Well, I pressed her one more time about the money that she owed J.C. Longstreet, so I asked her if she planned on paying him back, to which Taylor Hobson responded with, "He won't have to worry about me paying it back for much longer." After getting my answer, I promptly left to get ready for the dinner that was coming.
How did this dinner go?
I wish I could tell you more about it, however, I don't remember much. I arrived, I had a drink, I remember talking to Taylor Hobson, and all of a sudden the walls felt like they were caving in. I got so dizzy, so groggy, so I decided it was time for bed. Once I woke up, I realized that I had been drugged.
How did you realize that you were drugged?
I only had one drink throughout the entire night, and even on these strong sleeping pills that I take, I've never passed out so rapidly. I quite literally blacked out.
So, Ms. Nathanson, what happened that morning on April 25th?
Well, the morning after the dinner, I was awoken by by the crew cabin members to the news that Avery Bancroft had passed away. It was very unfortunate, and I wish I could say I was shocked. Immediately, my private investigative instincts kicked in, so I made my way over to his cabin.
What did you observe once you got to Bancroft's cabin?
Well, the first thing I noticed was these loose tea leaves on the floor. I picked them up and I smelled it, and it smelled just like peppermint, almost identical to the ones that Taylor Hobson had given to me the day before. And that's when I noticed something else that I found rather odd.
What else did you notice?
Underneath Avery Bancroft's bed was this like fallen teacup, and I took a really good look at it, and I realized it was the same teacup that Taylor Hobson had offered me tea in from yesterday. I'm almost 1,000% sure it was the same one, and I found it really strange to be there. So we were then rushed off the train, so I went back to my cabin to go pack.
So did you leave immediately after you packed?
No, curiosity got the best of me. Once the Australian police arrived, they told me that I could take a look at the crime scene as long as I didn't intervene with any of the evidence. And while I was there, I noticed something quite unusual.
What did you notice?
Well, while the Australian police were looking around, I no longer saw the teacup. It was gone. I found that very, very odd, and as I left, I bumped into Taylor Hobson. When I bumped into Taylor Hobson, there she was, holding that exact same teacup. Her face got a little flustered, and I looked back to Avery Bancroft's cabin. I was a bit confused, and then she went pale and rushed off. And in that moment, I guess, it might have all just clicked.
What is it that clicked for you, Ms. Nathanson?
There was something brewing, and most certainly Taylor Hobson was involved with it.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Apologies, Your Honor. This is a copy of what is on the label of the potassium, just so you know.
Good afternoon, Ms. Nathanson.
Good afternoon, Counselor.
I just have a couple questions for you so we can understand exactly what happened on that train, okay?
Sure.
You just clarified that you believe that you had been, you believe that you had been drugged, correct?
I believe I was, and I know the train had ample sleeping supplements, sleeping pills, Ambien to be specific. It was located in the storage cabin.
You believe that Taylor Hobson drugged you, right?
I can't say that for certain. The last person I remember talking to was Taylor Hobson. That's when I had my drink, and all of a sudden, boom, I literally couldn't stand another minute in that diner.
You believe that Taylor Hobson drugged you so there wouldn't be a PI on the train when she poisoned her father, is that right?
Objection, Your Honor. Attorney testifying may be heard.
Yes.
My witness already answered that they do not believe that it was Taylor Hobson that poisoned their drink, just that they remember blacking out. So for the opposing counsel to be stating that they do believe that it's attorney testifying.
If I may, Your Honor?
Yes.
The witness didn't say that they didn't believe it was Taylor Hobson. Ms. Nathanson clarified that Taylor Hobson was the last person that she remembers giving her a drink. That's not the same thing. As a result, it's perfectly admissible for me to ask a follow-up question.
I would sustain the objection. I believe that is what an incorrect interpretation of what the witness was testifying to.
Yes, Your Honor.
But you can rework that question to get to the point that you were trying to get to.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes or no, you believe that Taylor Hobson drugged you so you wouldn't be awake that night?
Again, Counselor, I do not believe it was Taylor Hobson who drugged me. I believe that Taylor Hobson was the last person I spoke to. That's the last person I remember speaking to, and I had one drink.
You also talked on direct about how Taylor invited you into her cabin for tea, right?
She did.
You talked about how she put a potassium supplement into that tea.
She
Is that
did.
right?
Yes.
So, just so we understand your testimony correctly, Taylor Hobson knows that you are a private investigator, right?
I would assume so. I mean, I can't really speak to what Taylor Hobson knows.
And you're the only private investigator on that train.
I was.
So Taylor invites the only private investigator on that train into her cabin, right?
Well, that was after I knocked on her door. I was asking about my client, about the money that she owes JC Longstreet.
And then she invited you into her cabin.
In response, yeah.
Then, your testimony is that she shows you the murder weapon. She shows
Sorry,
you,
murder weapon?
She shows you this bottle.
Counselor, I'm not sure what caused Avery Bancroft's death. I'm not a doctor.
You're not sure what caused Avery Bancroft's death?
I did not testify to that. I just know that there was a potassium supplement that was given to me.
You've reviewed every piece of evidence in today's case, right?
Yes.
Because you've reviewed every piece of evidence in today's case, you know exactly how Avery Bancroft died. Isn't that correct?
Well, I've read his autopsy, but again, I'm not a doctor. I don't want to testify.
You'd recognize that autopsy if you saw it today?
I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm approaching opposing counsel and the witness in turn, which was previously marked 19A. Would you like a copy, Your Honor?
Yes.
You're familiar with this document?
I am.
Is it a true and accurate copy?
I believe so.
Your Honor, at this point, we move to enter this exhibit into evidence.
No objections, Your Honor.
So moved.
This says that Avery Bancroft died as a result of consuming a large amount of potassium. Is that correct?
Sure, but bananas have potassium. They were given a lot of banana foster on the train, so
This is banana extract, right?
it is.
I can take that back.
All right.
So, Taylor Hobson shows you this banana extract,
Yes.
and you're the only PO.
Yes, she put it into both of her drinks. She said she'd been taking the supplement.
Then, she identifies it for you. She tells you it's a potassium supplement.
She says it's a supplement.
Just to clarify, you were the only person in the cabin at that time. Is that correct, apart from Taylor?
Yes.
So, no one else witnessed this occur.
It was in Taylor Hobson's cabin. I wouldn't imagine anyone else to be there.
Then I want to ask some questions so we understand completely how you conducted your investigation, okay?
Yes. Correction, counselor. I did conduct an investigation on the train.
That's right. You didn't conduct an official investigation at all, did you?
Not on the train, no.
Is it your testimony that you conducted an official investigation off the train?
No, but I was hired by Shanjigid afterwards. That's how I reviewed all the evidence in today's trial.
All of that evidence was provided to you by the Australian Federal Police, right?
Yes,
They collected that evidence,
they did,
and then they showed it to you.
and they did a fantastic job, yes, they did.
Now, Ms. Nathanson, your conclusions today are based off the fact that you saw that evidence and your own personal observations. Is that right?
And my experience, I would say that I have enough time in this field to come to these opinions. But yeah, I would say that my opinions lead me to believe that Taylor Hobson was involved in the death of her father.
Well, let's talk about those observations.
Sure.
Did you see Taylor kill her father?
Again, I was drugged that night, so no.
Then you must have seen Taylor enter her father's cabin that night.
Counselor, again, I was drugged that night.
Well, surely you saw photos or videos of Taylor entering her father's cabin.
Counselor, I was asleep. I was not shown any photos by the Australian police, so no.
Surely when you examined the evidence after, you must have found Taylor's fingerprints on the body.
I was not in charge of forensics.
You must have seen some kind of remnant that Taylor was there in that, in Mr. Bancroft's cabin, right?
Well, now that you mention it, on his autopsy, it does have a report of some markings around his neck, as if there was a forcible removal of a necklace. I do remember Taylor Hobson wearing that medallion right after the Australian police finished up in his cabin. I'm not sure if it's linked, but I guess to my opinion, if the autopsy says that there was a forcible removal of a necklace, and the last time I saw Avery Bancroft on the 24th, he was wearing that medallion, and then Taylor Hobson all of a sudden has it, I mean, you can put two and two together.
Well, you never saw Hobson take that medallion, did you?
No, but there were forcible removals, like bruising on his neck.
You didn't see how it was forcibly removed.
No, I was drugged that night.
You didn't see who removed it, did you?
No, but whoever has the medallion must have removed it.
Dr. Edmonds could have removed it.
Dr. Edmond doesn't have the medallion,
Dr. Edmonds physically could have removed it.
I guess.
Kirby Doolittle physically could have removed it.
Sure, but Kirby does not.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation, may be heard, lack of personal knowledge.
Yes.
This witness has not made any testimony today that she knows of a Kirby Doolittle, so the opposing counsel cannot ask her any questions of a Kirby Doolittle.
Your Honor, this witness investigated everyone on that train. As a result, of course they're aware of Kirby Doolittle. And when they answered, they admitted that they were aware of Kirby Doolittle. It's props. If the witness isn't aware, they can say so.
Mayor Torres, Your Honor. Just because the witness is familiar with all the exhibits and evidence doesn't have to mean that they ran into Kirby Doolittle on the train. So this is a lack of personal knowledge, and the witness would not be able to testify to this.
Again, Your Honor, if the witness doesn't know, they can say so. It's props.
I would agree that it's outside of the scope of what was initially testified to. So I
Yes,
sustain that objection.
Mr. Bancroft, he could have torn it off himself, couldn't he?
I mean, I guess so. I was not present.
Well, let's talk about some of the evidence that you didn't bring into court today, okay?
Sure.
You believe almost everyone on that train had a personal grudge against Avery Bancroft, right?
I think most people in Midlands do. Again, the tabloids, not good advertising of his reputation.
So you're aware that Dr. Edmond held a grudge against Mr. Bancroft, right?
I don't know about that.
You're not sure if Dr. Edmond held a grudge against Mr. Bancroft?
I don't know much about what Dr. Edmond thinks of Avery Bancroft. I can assume that Avery Bancroft had a bad reputation.
You remember you remember a deposition at the beginning of this trial, right?
I do.
Did you recognize what you saw in court today?
I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect the approaching opposing counsel and witness in terms of a copy of their deposition. Would you like a copy, Your Honor?
Reflected, yes. Thank you.
This is a copy of your deposition, is that right?
Appears to be.
Is it a fair and accurate copy?
Sure, yeah. I believe so.
Mr. Nathanson,
Ms.
Miss Nathanson, excuse me. I'd like to point to page 7, lines 223 to 225.
Mm-hmm.
You were asked, and who might that one or more other passengers be in regards to, and you respond, the other passengers in the platinum section. With 2 exceptions, only every passenger in the platinum section had an axe to grind with Avery Bancroft. Did I read that correctly?
Objection, Your Honor, improper impeachment may be heard.
Yes.
The contention of the defense today is that Nathanson has the belief of Dr. Hillary Edmonds' grudges against Avery Bancroft. Nowhere in this statement does it say that Nathanson knows of a grudge that Dr. Hillary Edmonds holds against Bancroft. Just that she's aware that passengers have an axe to grind with Avery Bancroft. As she stated earlier today, lots of people in Midlands had hatred towards Avery Bancroft. That doesn't mean she knows the specific grudge that Edmund holds against him.
Yes, Your Honor. The witness's quote is specifically that with 2 exceptions, every passenger in the platinum section had an axe to grind, meaning that they held a grudge against Avery Bancroft. As a result, this witness is aware that Dr. Edmond held a grudge against Avery Bancroft.
May I respond? She can be aware that multiple people on the train have an issue with Avery Bancroft, but to know that Dr. Hillary Edmond still to this day holds a grudge to Avery Bancroft, she cannot testify to that in court today, and therefore this is improper impeachment.
If I may, Your Honor, the specific statement reads that Taylor Hobson could have worked with other people to kill Mr. Bancroft. When asked who those other people are, she clarifies these other people in the platinum section with 2 exceptions. Lines 226 to 227 explain that the only 2 exceptions are Avery Bancroft and Bailey Connell. Nathanson and Bailey Connell. Dr. Edmond is neither Jordan Nathanson nor Bailey Connell. As a result, this witness is aware that Dr. Edmond held a grudge against Avery Bancroft.
I'll overrule the objection of my opinion.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, it states that the other passengers in the platinum section, with 2 exceptions, every passenger in the platinum section had an axe to grind with Avery Bancroft, correct?
It does, but Dr. Edmonds is not the only passenger on the train. There were multiple
I can
others,
take that back.
including Taylor Hobson.
In your review of all of the evidence in today's case, you came across a memoir written by Avery Bancroft, right?
Yes,
Would you recognize it if you saw it today?
yes, I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that approaching opposing counsel and witness in turn with a copy of Exhibit 35. Would you like a copy, Your Honor?
Reflected.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor.
This is the page of the memoir you saw. Is that right?
It is.
Is that a true and accurate copy?
Again, I reviewed it, but I don't remember the in-depth details of it, so I'll take your word for it.
Your Honor, at this point, we move to enter this exhibit into evidence.
Yes, Your Honor, objection to authentication. May I be heard?
Yes.
This witness has no way of knowing if this memoir is authentic in itself. She has no way of proving that this piece of evidence came from a source that she's aware of, if it's from an original source. Therefore, this is, she cannot testify to this.
If I may, Your Honor, firstly, this memoir says it's a memoir by Avery Bancroft. Secondly, this witness testified that they were able to see the evidence that the Australian Federal Police collected. As a result, this goes to weight and not admissibility. Because the Australian Federal Police collected this evidence, it's reasonable to assume it came from Avery Bancroft.
May I respond briefly? Just because of the fact that this came from the Australian Federal Police does not mean that this exact memoir here can be authenticated. This memoir could have been written on the train by any of the passengers in any way referring to it being Avery Bancroft when in fact it isn't. The witness does not have any proof, nor does the plaintiff, that this came from Avery Bancroft and therefore cannot be authenticated.
I sustain that. It was not properly authenticated.
Yes, Your Honor, I can take that back. Despite knowing that Dr. Edmond held a grudge against Avery Bancroft, your conclusion was that Taylor Hobson caused this death, correct?
Dr. Edmond and everybody in Midlands had something against Avery Bancroft.
So
That's
your
not
conclusion
accurate.
was that Taylor caused this death?
Yes, it is my personal opinion.
Then I'd like to talk about why you came to that conclusion.
Sure,
You're testifying for the plaintiff today, is that right?
I am,
You know the plaintiff personally, don't you?
professionally.
That's right. The plaintiff is a regular customer of yours.
Regular enough, maybe twice a year, 3 times a year,
Now,
more or less.
when the plaintiff first hired you, you showed them a brochure, is that right?
I did,
You'd recognize it if you saw it today?
I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm approaching the opposing counsel and witness in turn with copies of that brochure. Would you like a copy, Your Honor?
Yes, reflected.
Thank you, counsel.
This is one of your brochures, correct?
Appears to be, yeah.
Is it a true and accurate copy?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, yes.
You wrote it yourself, right?
I believe I did, yes, I did.
Your Honor, at this point, we move to enter this exhibit into evidence.
Objection to hearsay?
Can you elaborate?
Yes. All of the information within this brochure is being used for the truth of the matter asserted in court today, therefore it is hearsay.
If I may, Your Honor, the portion of the document we're quoting is on the second page in the trial testimony section. The final sentence of that section. We believe that sentence goes to the witness's motive, intent, or plan. As a result, it is admissible under hearsay exception 8033.
I'll overrule the objection. And it is evidence.
Now, you handed this to Shannon when she first hired you, right?
I did, it advertises my business.
It says that we know how to present the facts in a way that gets you what you're looking for, doesn't it?
Counselor, I'm a private investigator. I deal with a lot of cases
Ms.
involving.
Nathanson, is that what it says on the brochure?
It's what it says, but
Then I can take that back from you. Ms. Nathanson? You work on a contingency fee today, right?
it's pretty typical in my field, yes.
A contingency fee of $250,000.
Well, that's 0.1% of this case. Typically, contingencies fees are on average about 20%.
Ms. Nathanson, if the plaintiff wins, you get $250,000.
0.1%, yes.
If the defense wins, you get nothing.
That's how a contingency fee works.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any further questions?
No redirect, Your Honor, I just asked that my witness be allowed to step down.
Yes, you can step down.
The plaintiff calls Dr. Hillary Edmond to the stand. Permission to construct a demonstrative.
Yes, granted.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Could you introduce yourself to the court?
Dr. Hilaria Edmond.
Now, Dr. Edmond, can you give us a little bit more about your background?
Yes, so I am licensed doctor in pulmonology and internal medicine. I went to Colorado College for my bachelor's degree. I went to Street School of Medicine for medical degree. And I spent 2 years in Nepal working on patients with heart and kidney issues, but I also focus on all the organs internally. I'm also a really big fan of mountain climbing. Reminds me of my Ukrainian village.
Now, Dr. Edmond, why are you testifying in court today?
Well, I was a doctor on Midrevlina Express. I treat Mr. Bancroft and I interact with him, Taylor Hobson, some other passengers on the train.
And Dr. Edmond, were you asked to prepare a report for today's case?
Yes, I was. I had a method to treating Mr. Bancroft, creating expert report, and testifying in court today called the T method.
And what materials did you review in preparing your report for today's case?
Yes, so my method, the T method, it is the standard procedure when I treat Mr. Bancroft. Then after we deboard the train, I explain what happened. I was given documents like Mr. Bancroft autopsy, medical record, banana extract, and then I apply facts by testifying in court today.
And did you reliably apply this method to the facts of today's case?
Yes, I did.
And Dr. Edmond, is this method the gold standard in your field?
Oh, it is pure gold, and I would know because my father loves his gold standard vodka.
Now, Dr. Edmond, I want to talk to you a little bit more about the materials you reviewed for today's case. You said that you reviewed an autopsy, correct?
Yes, I did.
And would you recognize that autopsy if I showed it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching my witness and opposing counsel in turn with what has already been admitted into evidence as Exhibit 19.
So,
Does your honor already have a copy?
I believe so, yes.
Now, Dr. Edmond, is this the autopsy you reviewed for today's case?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what you gleaned from this autopsy when reviewing it?
Yes, so it says Mr. Bancroft had at least stage 3 CKD, possibly stage 4, said he died from hyperkalemia, also says he has some bruising on the neck from some removal of necklace, and that there was no unique stomach contents in the body.
Now, Dr. Edmond, you just mentioned no unique stomach contents. What does that mean?
Well, it means that when Mr. Bancroft died, he didn't have any food in stomach. If he died from something that he ingested, it couldn't have been food, it had to be some sort of liquid.
Now, Dr. Edmond, you earlier mentioned CKD, or chronic kidney disease. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
Yes, as part of my expert report, I actually created a diagram to explain what CKD is.
Permission for the witness to step down and make use of the demonstrator?
Yes.
I can hold it. Dr. Edmond. Now, Dr. Edmond, can you tell us a little bit more about what CKD is?
Yes, so here we have two kidneys, a healthy kidney and a diseased kidney. A healthy kidney can filter in these toxins that come from body pretty easily. It does not go back to bloodstream. As you can see, it gets filtered out by kidney. But if you have chronic kidney disease, like Mr. Bancroft, well, these chemicals, they go back out into bloodstream because kidney is not good at filtering it in and out. And if it goes back to bloodstream, these chemicals, it could be deadly.
Now, Dr. Edmond, how could this be deadly?
Well, if chemicals, like say potassium, go back to bloodstream and you have CKD, one of those symptoms would be a heart attack.
Now, Dr. Edmond, you mentioned hyperkalemia earlier. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
Yes, it is just fancy doctor talk for a lot of potassium in the blood, which means these molecules, there is a lot of them, and it is not natural for you to have that in the body.
Permission for Dr. Edmond to step back on the stand? Yes. Now, Dr. Edmond, you mentioned hyperkalemia. Did you observe Mr. Bancroft exhibiting any symptoms of hyperkalemia during your time on the Mid-Riverina Express?
No, he had no symptoms, only on the 25th when I treated him, which makes sense because to me he looked healthy the whole train ride, and his medical record that I reviewed after we deboard train said that he also was in perfect health besides CKD.
And would you recognize that medical record if I showed it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel and my witness in turn with what has been pre-marked and pre-admitted as Exhibit 20. Did your honor already have a copy?
What exhibit is that?
Exhibit 20.
No.
Would your honor like a copy?
Yes.
Now, Dr. Edmond, is this the medical record you reviewed for today's case?
Yes, I looked at it after getting off the train.
And Dr. Edmond, can you tell us a little bit more about what this medical record says?
Yes, so it says in October 2022, Mr. Bancroft go to doctor, tell him that he should watch potassium intake, and that Taylor Hobson was present for whole conversation and asked if excessive potassium could be fatal to somebody with normal kidneys.
Now, Dr. Edmond, you mentioned earlier that you observed Mr. Bancroft to be asymptomatic. What can cause someone to progress from asymptomatic to severely hyperkalemic in such a short period of time?
It would have to be some other source, a concentrated source with a lot of potassium in it.
And did you review any materials that fit this criteria?
Yes, I was given a bottle of banana extract by the plaintiff.
And would you recognize this bottle if I showed it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel and my witness in turn with what has already been admitted into evidence as Exhibit 40. Now, Dr. Edmond, can you tell us a little bit more about when you observed this potassium during your time on the Mid-Riverina Express?
Yes, I actually see this in a shop we stop in Handorf, this nice little village that reminds me of Ukraine. We go into store, Sherstool and Kraft, and I see this being sold. I saw somebody actually holding it in their hand.
And Dr. Edmond, who was holding it in their hand?
Well, I came to learn it was Taylor Hobson. They held a bottle in hand and asked if there was something stronger in the bag by somebody in the store. Then they see me, walk over, and introduce themselves as Taylor Hobson. They also said they were Bancroft's child and had keys to his cabin.
And Dr. Edmond, I just want to circle back to the expert report you were asked to provide for today's case. What conclusions did you come to?
Yes, well, I concluded that Mr. Bancroft had to have died from some sort of concentrated potassium that caused his heart attack, and then he died.
Now, Dr. Edmond, I just want to talk to you about your final days aboard the Mid-Riverina Express. Did you have any other interactions with Mr. Bancroft other than treating him on April 25th?
Yes, I saw him quite some time on the train. He was always wearing this necklace.
And Dr. Edmond, would you recognize this necklace if I showed it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm approaching opposing counsel and my witness in turn with what has already been entered into evidence as Exhibit 17. Dr. Edmond, is this the necklace you saw Mr. Bancroft wearing?
Yes, it is.
Now I want to circle back to the day you treated Mr. Bancroft. When you were treating Mr. Bancroft, was he wearing this medallion?
No, he wasn't. Instead, there were in the autopsy some marks on his neck, but I didn't see this.
And Dr. Edmond, I want to finally conclude with your expert report. Is it likely that Mr. Bancroft suffered a naturally occurring heart attack?
No, it is highly unlikely because if he was suffering from hyperkalemia, that hyperkalemia most likely caused his heart attack.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions. Defense?
Yes, Your Honor. May I ask for opposing counsel to deconstruct the demonstrative? Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, do I have permission to retrieve the exhibits from my witness?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Edmond.
Good afternoon, counselor.
You'd agree with me that you have a connection to this case beyond your medical expertise.
What do you mean, counselor?
Well, you have a personal history with the decedent, Avery Bancroft.
I knew him before I boarded the train.
Well, Dr. Edmond, you're married, correct?
Yes, I am.
And your spouse's name is Merrick Gilbertson?
Yes, my lovely husband.
And your husband actually ran for political office, is that right?
Oh yes, politics here, dirty game. Capitalism is not like communism.
Your husband, his opponent was supported by Avery Bancroft.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. I see no relevance in talking about Dr. Edmond's husband's political misdoings. That does not make any action committed by Taylor Hobson any more or less or more probable in today's case.
Response, Your Honor. If I may proffer, it's the defense's contention that Dr. Edmond was in fact a culpable actor, making it less likely that Taylor Hobson was a culpable actor. And this line of questioning is going to go into the motives of Dr. Edmond.
Your Honor, if I may. If they want to talk about Dr. Edmond's personal bias, they're more than welcome to. It is cross-examination. But there is no reason to talk about the personal biases of her husband. It is not relevant to today's case.
Any last response on those grounds? Opposing counsel just said that we're welcome to ask on any personal bias, and a personal bias of a close family member or husband would be very relevant to the personal bias of Dr. Edmond.
I'll overrule the objection and allow the questions.
Yes, Your Honor. Your husband's political opponent was supported by Avery Bancroft.
Well, Mr. Bancroft gave money to some super PAC, and that funded my husband's opponent.
Well, he didn't just give money, he actually ran attack ads, isn't that right?
Through his money, the super PAC ran attack ads.
But you blame Avery Bancroft for those ads.
I blame him for paying them to run those ads.
And these ads called your husband a liar.
Yes, but he was not a liar.
But these ads called your husband corrupt.
Again, not true.
But these ads from Avery Bancroft, they accused your husband of taking bribes.
The super PAC that funded them, yes.
But you still blame Avery Bancroft.
For funding the super PAC, sure.
And after this, your husband lost the race.
Yes, but again, it is an election. Maybe the people just did not like my husband.
Well, your husband became very depressed after the loss.
Yes, he did.
And he was in pain.
He was very upset.
Is it your testimony that her husband wasn't in pain?
Emotional pain, like I said, very upset.
And you blame Avery Bancroft for that depression and pain.
Sure.
And these attack ads, they addressed you as well.
Yes, they did.
And they accused you of committing tax fraud.
But I was found to be all clear.
Well, you weren't all clear because you lost patience.
Yes, around that time I did see patients trickle, and I actually had my own private practice, admin associates. I had to close it because it was not bringing enough money in. And when one door closes, well, another one will open eventually. And it did. I found employment again.
But just to be clear, you had to close your practice because of Avery Bancroft.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. They already testified that they had to close their practice.
Your Honor, the witness hasn't specifically testified that they had to close their practice because of Avery Bancroft. I'm just clarifying this question.
Overruled.
It wasn't because of Mr. Bancroft specifically. I mean, he ran these ads, but it also could have been the receptionist at my office. All I know is that he released, Super PAC released ads, I lose clients, I need money, I close practice.
Well, you're aware that these ads ruined your reputation.
A little bit, yes.
And because after you closed your practice, you couldn't find a job in Midlands for over a year.
Yes, but I kept searching and I finally found one in Argentina. Beautiful country.
But your professional reputation in Midlands, your home state, was ruined.
Yes, but now my home country is Argentina.
And again, you blame Avery Bancroft for ruining that reputation.
I blame the Super PAC he funded.
Is it your testimony today that you do not blame Avery Bancroft?
I blame Mr. Bancroft for the pain of my husband, but not necessarily for the closing of my practice.
I'd like to move on to the events of the train. Now, you mentioned on direct examination that you treated Avery Bancroft,
Yes, I did.
and he was having a heart attack, that's correct?
Yes, later after he died, I identified it as heart attack.
But you were aware on the train of Bancroft's chronic kidney disease.
Maybe a day, no, on April 24th I found out he had CKD. Before that I had no knowledge.
But on the train, he did tell you that he had chronic kidney disease.
The night he died, yes.
And you're aware of that potassium extract can be very deadly for someone with kidney disease.
Yes.
Now, you testified on direct that you saw Taylor Hobson in a store with banana extract.
Yes, she was holding it.
But just to be clear, you never saw Taylor Hobson buy that.
No, just hold it.
In fact, you too were in that store with that same banana extract.
Oh, but I wasn't buying it. I don't like bananas, so I definitely did not have any.
You were the last person to treat Avery Bancroft, isn't that right?
I actually treated him with firefighter Alex Silva.
But you were the only one performing CPR.
Alex Silva was watching me and assisting me.
But you were the only person giving CPR to Avery Bancroft.
Well, yes, but Alex Silva was assisting where he felt like he should be.
But you were the first one on the scene.
Yes, because Kirby Doolittle started yelling for help, and as a doctor, I mean, I took an oath to help people. I had to go and help whoever was in pain.
And it was you who declared Avery Bancroft's time of death.
Yes, I did.
Now, you relied on all of your professional experience to come to your conclusions, isn't that right?
Yes, I did.
And all of that professional experience, that's on your CV, isn't that right?
Yes, it is.
And would you recognize a copy of your CV?
Sure.
May the record reflect that we're approaching opposing counsel, the witness in turn, with Exhibit 3.
Would Your Honor like a copy?
Yeah.
Dr. Edmond, this is your CV.
Yes, it is.
It's a fair and accurate copy,
It is.
and it hasn't been changed or altered in any way.
No.
Your Honor, motion to enter Exhibit 3 into evidence.
No objections, Your Honor.
So moved.
Dr. Edmond, is it true that a publication you wrote says nature's poison, the impact of a physician's personal bias on patient treatment?
Objection, Your Honor, to more prejudicial than probative. It's opposing counsel's contention that Dr. Edmond was a culpable actor in the role of her father. In a culpable actor in the death of Avery Bancroft. They're trying to use Dr. Edmond's previous publications to bias and inflame the passions of the jury, that she committed the very same act that she talked about in this publication. Thus, the prejudicial value is highly outweighs the probative value in today's case.
Response, Your Honor. First of all, opposing counsel did acknowledge that it is our contention that Dr. Edmond was a culpable actor, and therefore it goes to the probative value of Dr. Edmond's awareness of a personal bias on patient treatment. I may proffer, Your Honor. This line of questioning is going to go into Dr. Edmond's personal bias when administering treatment to Avery Bancroft. It's highly relevant, and it is probative to our decision.
Your Honor, if I may, then I'd amend my objection to character evidence. They're trying to prove that Dr. Edmond acted in accordance with the document that she wrote. This is improper character evidence and is inadmissible in court today.
Response to those grounds, Your Honor. During pretrial matters, my co-counsel brought forth a piece of case law which states that evidence for a alternate suspect does not constitute character evidence, and therefore this would be admissible.
I'll overrule the objection.
Dr. Edmond, the publication you wrote is titled Nature's Poison, the Impact of a Physician's Personal Bias on Patient Treatment. Did I read that right?
Yes, and if you actually read my document, it would tell you is that in normal situations, bias plays a role, but in emergency situations, that goes out the window.
I can take that back. Dr. Edmond, you would agree with me that in a normal situation, you should not have treated Avery Bancroft.
No, and I would not volunteer to, but it was emergency situation. I could not sit by and do nothing.
But just to be clear, you were not successful in saving Avery Bancroft's life.
But I put all my efforts into it.
Just to be clear, yes or no, were you successful in saving Avery Bancroft's life?
No, but I put all my effort into it.
And Avery Bancroft is the person you feel solely responsible for your spouse's depression. and pain.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Any response?
Your Honor, this is just to clarify.
I'll sustain that.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, I just asked that my witness be able to step down.
Yes, thank you.
Your Honor, the plaintiff's calls are totally useless. May I begin?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hughes. Please say your name for the board.
Hi, I'm so sorry. That's a habit I have of being an influencer. I'm Kelly Hughes.
Ms. Hughes, what do you do for a living?
If you know me, okay, maybe not. If you know me from my YouTube channel. Kelly Hughes does everything.
And why are you testifying in court today?
Well, I actually used to date Taylor Hobson, and I was on the train when their father passed away.
What was your relationship with Taylor Hobson like?
You know, it was great until I found out that they were just using me.
Why do you say that Taylor Hobson was using you?
Well, after their father died, Taylor proposed to me, and I was the happiest woman on earth until I found out that they proposed because they told me if we got married, I wouldn't have to testify against them in court. They told me that they didn't want me to reveal that they were millions of dollars in debt and needed Bancroft's inheritance. And look, I knew Taylor had run out of money. I didn't know it was that bad.
Ms. Hughes, why do you say that you knew Taylor had ran out of money?
Well, Taylor would usually offer to pay for everything. But in January of 2024, they told me that they no longer had the money to do that, which was fine, but it's also why I was so surprised when they came to me willing to pay for this big trip. But they said that it'd be exciting enough, so I agreed.
And Ms. Hughes, did you ever find out what was exciting enough about this trip?
Well, all my excitement ended when I found out that their father was staying just 2 cabins down from us. Taylor didn't seem surprised at all though, which was weird because I knew they didn't have the best relationship.
Mrs., why do you say they didn't have the best relationship?
Taylor never really talked about their father, and in 2023, they got into this huge argument at dinner that just ended with Taylor storming out after saying, "Next time, spare the invite. The only event of yours I'll ever go to is your funeral." Yikes.
Thank you, Mrs. I now want to bring you back to the train. Did you go on any excursions?
Yeah, me and Taylor went shopping in Hondorf and eventually ended up in Schur's Tool and Craft.
Did you buy anything?
I didn't buy anything, but I know that Taylor did. I saw their receipt and they even told me it was theirs.
And would you recognize the receipt if shown to you today?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I am approaching opposing counsel and the witness adjourned, but has been marked as Exhibit 31 for identification purposes.
Reflected.
Your Honor, would you like a copy?
Thank you, yes.
No, Mrs., what did I just hand you?
This is Taylor's receipt.
And is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
Has it been changed or altered in any way since you've last seen it?
No.
At this time, the plaintiff moves to enter Exhibit 31 into evidence as a full exhibit. No objection, Your Honor.
So entered.
Now, Mrs., could you please tell us what Taylor Hobson bought?
Here it says about sunblock, sunglasses, concentrated banana extract, and then tea leaves in a teacup.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Now, I want to once again bring you back to the train and talk about Avery Bancroft. Did you talk to Mr. Bancroft at all?
Yeah, actually. The day before Bancroft died, he invited me and Taylor for some tea. I thought it'd be different this time, so I suggested that Taylor gift him the tea that they had already bought.
And how did tea time go?
Well, first Taylor told me that they'd give Bancroft tea later, and then secondly, when we walked in, the first thing we see is Mr. Bancroft screaming into the phone, "No child of mine will ever see another cent from me." Awkward.
Objection, Your Honor, as to hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement being used in court today for the truth of the matter.
Your Honor, this statement is an exception of hearsay under Rule 8033, a motive and tender plan. This statement is a clear plan of Bancroft to not give any more of his money to any of his children.
Response, Your Honor. Your Honor, nowhere in this witness's testimony has there been any sort of plan. It is simply Mr. Bancroft's reaction to an extent. Therefore, this is not an exception under that rule.
I'll sustain the objection as hearsay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, Ms. Hughes, how did tea time go?
Well, as I just said, it was a bit awkward. And after Avery said that, eventually Taylor's mother got brought up.
And why did they bring up Taylor's mother?
I mainly remember that the conversation ended with Taylor screaming at Avery, "She died, you idiot, because you were too greedy to pay for her treatment." We left soon after.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. I would now like to talk about the day that Bancroft died. How did that morning start after you?
Well, the night before, I never saw Taylor come back to bed. But that morning, when I woke up to the screams of Kirby Doolittle crying out that Bancroft was dying, Taylor was just standing there. I tried to get up to see what was happening, but she stopped me. Then she said she did what she had to do, what she needed to do.
And did you make any observations about Taylor Hobson that morning?
She was wearing a medallion.
Would you recognize the medallion?
Yes.
Your Honor, let the court reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel and the witness with Exhibit 17. Now, Ms. Hughes, is this a medallion that Taylor Hobson was wearing?
Yes, it was.
And do you know where it came from?
This is Avery Bancroft's medallion. I know because the wear and tear is the exact same.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Now, could you please tell us what happened later that morning?
After that, we headed to Bancroft's cabin. It's a bit too much to detail. I mainly remember that when we were leaving, I saw Taylor with the same tea leaves and teacup that she bought from Schur's Tool and Craft.
And Could you please tell us what Taylor Hobson was doing with the tea leaves and teacup?
Yeah, she was carrying that exact tea leaf and teacup out from Bancroft's cabin. I even saw her throw away the receipt that showed that she had bought those two items.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any comments?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Dews.
Good afternoon.
I want to talk about Ms. Hobson's reaction to her father's death.
Mhm.
On direct examination, you mentioned that she proposed to you,
Yeah, she did.
and she said that she proposed to, you said that she proposed to you because she was scared of you testifying against her.
She told me that if we married, then I wouldn't have to testify against her.
Just to be clear for the jury, this happened right after her father died.
Well, it happened a bit later, when we returned back to Midlands.
Now, I want to talk about what you saw with Ms. Hobson and Mr. Bancroft on the train. You mentioned on direct examination that you heard an argument,
What argument are you specifying?
the one at dinner.
Sorry, can you specify what argument you're talking about?
Ms. Dews, on direct examination, you mentioned that you heard an argument between Ms. Hobson and her father, Mr. Bancroft.
No, I don't remember saying that. I remember saying that during the day, when we were invited to tea from Bancroft, that she ran out of the room screaming at Bancroft that her mother died because Bancroft was too greedy to pay for her treatment.
Apologies, Ms. Dews. You heard Ms. Hobson scream at her father,
Yeah,
and it was a hostile environment.
yeah, definitely.
In fact, this wasn't the first hostile interaction you've seen between them, isn't that right?
No, I don't think they had the best relationship.
In fact, the only other interaction you saw was them arguing.
Yeah, I mean, anytime they were together that I saw, they were always arguing.
Exactly, so this wasn't out of the ordinary.
No, it wasn't.
Now, let's talk about why you're testifying today. You have a streaming channel?
Yeah, I do. Ellie Dews does everything. My producers pick the name.
And you have around 400,000 viewers?
Yeah, I do.
Now, your channel, it used to be much smaller, wasn't it?
Yeah, it used to be, until I became famous after testifying in court. But it was really weird. People started dressing up as me for Halloween. Like, who does that?
Exactly. You only became famous after you started testifying.
Well, I wasn't not famous beforehand, but I did get more views.
Now, Ms. Dews, your channel has recently plateaued,
Yeah, it stagnated a bit.
and you hope that this testimony will raise your viewership to 1 million.
Well, I was subpoenaed to be here, so I don't have a choice but to be here. So
But-
why not hope for the best?
You do hope that this testimony would raise your viewership.
Yeah, because I have to be here, why not hope for the best?
Now, there's another reason you're testifying today. You are here in court testifying against Taylor Hobson.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, you were interrogated after the trip, isn't that correct?
Yes, by the police.
And would you recognize a transcript of that interrogation if I showed it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel and the witness in turn with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 14.
Reflect.
Would Your Honor like the copy?
Yes.
Ms. Dews, what is this?
This is my interrogation with the police.
Is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yeah, and this was right after Avery passed away.
At this time, Your Honor, the defense moves to enter Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I mean this in the nicest way, but I think another exhibit was attached to this.
Oh, apologies.
Would you like me to detach it?
Yes. I appreciate that. Ms. Dews, what is this?
This is my interrogation with the police.
And this happened right after Mr. Bancroft died, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I was still really shaken.
Now, in this investigation, you said that Bancroft, apologies, in this investigation that you said that Taylor did nothing wrong.
Can you point to where I got that? I'm sorry.
Yes, this was on the second page, I believe, line 49.
Yeah, I mean, again, at the time, I couldn't even imagine Taylor would do such a thing, but look where we are today.
Exactly, but right after Mr. Bancroft's death, you thought Taylor did nothing wrong.
Yeah, right after that, I was just so shaken and confused.
And that you said that Taylor had no reason to hurt Mr. Bancroft.
Yeah, I couldn't even remember what happened on the train.
You in fact said that Taylor was busy working, and that if you're looking for the Bancroft kid who wanted your old dad dead, Shannon Shaheen was your person.
Yeah,
And now you're in court testifying against Taylor Hobson.
yeah, I am. Since then, I've changed my mind. And again, this was when I was shaken and confused and scared.
But this happened right after Mr. Bancroft's death, and today you're in court testifying against Taylor Hobson.
Yeah, right after I witnessed a dead man's body.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirects?
No, Your Honor.
Do you have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, I ask that my witness be allowed to step down, and with that, the plaintiff rests his case in chief.
Motion to retrieve,
Yes.
We'll take a 5-minute recess before defense concludes their, starts their presentation.